Hey, I'm Ellie and I'm a legal engineer at Wordsmith, and today I am joined by the lovely
Lucy Terrell. I'm the general counsel at Wordsmith.
Yeah.
I work very closely with Ellie on all things internal legal.
If you weren't already sure from our entire LinkedIn feeds, we do work at Wordsmith. So Wordsmith is a legal AI tool. We think about ourselves as if we are the command center for in-house legal. The way Ross likes to put it is like air traffic control. So we essentially control all things legal to move at the speed of the business. I think in the past, and we'll probably comment a little bit more on this later, but legal was often seen as the bottleneck, which is not really fair. I don't love that for them. But yeah, we're there to kind of help them out with that and make things run a lot smoother. We are going to talk a little bit about use cases that we have actually implemented internally. So we talk an awful lot about use cases more generally and what we've seen customers do. But what do we do internally at Wordsmith? Okay, so let's kick it off. What use case are we talking about today?
So today we wanted to share a bit of insight into our Ask Legal agent. And before we had this, what I found was that we're a small legal team and there were lots of questions that we were getting regularly. And they didn't take long to answer, but they were sat with me. So it could be in my emails, could be in Slack or Teams if you have that. And they really don't take that long, but it's just getting to them and then being able to answer them. And there's lots of different categories of questions, right? You have some really complicated ones that take a bit of time. Then there are some factual questions that people come to legal for because they know that we know the answer.
Yeah.
And so what we've been able to do is set up a channel, like a legal front door, one place where anyone from finance to sales, engineering, product marketing can come to one place. Because I think sometimes I used to underestimate that everybody even knows what a legal question is.
Exactly.
And so you set this up so that we could have one place where they come with multiple agents, and I'm sure you can go into a bit more detail around the technicalities. But that just means that we're more approachable. It means that someone can just ask a question. And again, on the scale of a difficult question to an easy question, if we start the easy question, might be, what's our company number?
Yeah.
It's a factual question. I've made sure that all the underlying sources for the legal questions are accessible. And that means that the AI is very good at going to retrieve that information and then surfacing it with the source so that we're very clear that it's gone somewhere and got the right information, and it's come back and surfaced that information for the business. And it's just straight away, instead of someone just asking me a question, it being sat with me, they get a result instantly, depending on how we set it up, and we can go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, like, to walk this back a bit, I know we're focusing on us today, but this is probably one of the easiest low-hanging fruit use cases that you could possibly implement. Yep. And in fact, I know that I've told everybody this already, but before I joined Wordsmith, I was a customer. And I bought Wordsmith for this very reason. We had found across the business that our lawyers were spending hours upon hours with those monotonous, repetitive questions, things that the answers were contained in policies, in Google Drive, in Notion, wherever that might be. But business users just didn't want to go and source those answers. And I totally understand it. And I was probably very much guilty of that too, because they were very dense legalese policies. And they're very important, but when you're that business user that just needs an answer at a click of a button, that's all you need. So that's why we implemented this.
Companies have come up with solutions to this before, whether it's kind of intranet pages with Legal 101 or FAQs. But this is, fueling it, empowering it with AI. And so you get those, you get really specific results, which are linked to sources, and you have visibility over them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So will we dive into a little bit more about how we actually built this? So like if we go through this step by step, so we're G Drive users. Mm-hmm. So we are able to natively sync up to Google Drive, and we pull all those wonderful policies that you have built into our Wordsmith agent, and we accompany that along with custom instructions that you and I spent quite a while actually going over. So this agent can do multiple things. We're going to go through these one by one, but the first one that we kind of touched on there was the general Q&A. So very, very simply, Wordsmith is able to use RAG and basically go through our Google Drive, source the information that the user actually needs. And I like to think about RAG, you've got your context window and you've got your RAG. So context window is like having a backpack on. And you can fit as many books and papers and everything into there. And as long as you're able to zip up that bag, that's the context window. Whereas with RAG, and what makes it perfect for this use case, which is needle in the haystack, is that if you have a very, very specific question on what type of food do they eat in Portugal, you're able to go to that specific part of the library, you're able to pull out that book, that very specific page, rip it out and go back to your desk and read that one page. Mm-hmm. So that's what AI is very, very good at by using RAG. So that's what you're able to set up.
Is it worth explaining RAG, what that actually means?
Yeah. So RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And again, to go back to that, what it's really, really good for is that needle in the haystack kind of queries. So again, when a user comes in and they ask who can sign contracts over 200K, Wordsmith is going to be able to search through our policies, pull out that it can be Lucy, and it'll give the user her tag, and they'll be able to actually message you and ask you, can you actually sign this in their behalf?
That's awesome. And you mentioned one thing about the underlying data, and what I find really helpful is that we're G Suite, so we've got our Google Drive, but also if you've got static documents, some of our policies, for example, are good old-fashioned PDFs. That are connected to our security processes, so we can add those in too. But what I love about like Notion and Google Drive and Google Docs is if you're continuing to update the underlying source, that then pulls through in our knowledge base anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you have to update multiple things in different places, which I think lawyers have always had to grapple with. When something changes, you have to change it in loads of different places. So we're quite deliberate about trying to make sure we update the underlying source and not necessarily upload a document that's going to go out of date quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really important point. Like in the past, I've tried a lot of these tools over the years, and that was one thing I always found was missing, was that it was just static docs that you could upload. So we all know how often policies, things can change, whether you've changed a sentence, a full stop, somebody's left the business. So now you're telling me I've got to go not only update the documents, but go back into my system, upload that document again, delete the old one, retrain the AI, like probably wait 24 hours for it to actually index. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Whereas if we can automatically sync, you just have to change your document and focus on that, then you're all good, your hands off. So that is the very, very basic idea, I guess, of the Q&A aspect of it. And that's where we really started with this.
Yeah, I suppose one more thing that I would add for the Ask Legal kind of Q&A functionality, which I think, again, I take it for granted now because it was one of the first things that you set up and we've been using across the business. And the feature that I love the most, and maybe it's because I'm a control freak, is the way that we've set it up with the Copilot mode. So if we want to have the ability to stop answers going out without me reviewing them first. So again, we've touched on the easy things, go and find this piece of information, what's in the policy, answer the question. Whereas if it was finance asking a question about our funding docs or covenants in debt documents, for example, and someone wants to, check that before it goes back to them because the consequences are huge or it's a very difficult provision, so we want to understand how it's being applied, then you can have the answer so that it comes up in a separate channel, which we have as an admin channel. And again, it's not just me in that group, it can be other people so that I'm still not the blocker, or if I want visibility over that, then we can set that up. So then I can either assign it to somebody else or I can go in, improve it, change the answer if I want to, and then I can set the system so that it either remembers that response and it will learn from it. But if it was just a one-off, because I just think this is a very weird thing, or I want to put a specific comment into that person, then I make sure that it doesn't save it to go back into the system. So it's kind of a deliberate thing, which I actually really love, because it means that when I'm confident that it will go and answer the questions, and I still have visibility of those channels, I have that. But if I want more control, but this speeds me up because it's already drafted a response, then I just hit approve or I improve it slightly and then it gets released to the business, then it's still helped a huge amount. Yeah. And there's actually probably a middle ground as well, where we have alerts. So if I'm comfortable with responses going out to the business, I can include specific keywords. So they're carrying on. But if something is asked, then it will alert me to that. So breach or sharing, it's actually quite interesting when you think about the words you want to ask, because it's not confidentiality or indemnity. But the things that would fall, like if I heard it in the office, would make me sit up and think, hang on a minute, what are you doing over there? That's how I think about that. So I think I've got kind of three different settings.
Yeah, I love that, especially the word deliberate around it. But if we're talking about favorite capabilities, I would say mine is probably the fact that you can have multiple agents in the one channel. I love this feature, and especially like that's one of the reasons I bought it, right? Was we had around 13 entities, I think, in Doc Planner. We needed to have the ability to put all those in one channel, because when you've got a company of 2,000, 3,000 people, you don't want to have 40 different channels going on. My Slack's already a mess as it is. But now, like translating that into Wordsmith, what that looks like is that we are able to have Ask Finance, Ask HR, Ask Legal, a general Ask Product, Ask Wordsmith, all in the one channel. And you've got two options there. You can either have a manual drop down where the user has to deliberately choose which agent they want to pull that answer from, or what we've moved on to, which I love, is auto routing. So we talked a little bit before about how you can have custom instructions. So this is how I like to think about building the AI's brain. You've got what we touched on, which is the knowledge documents, pulling and syncing from Google Drive. And then you've also got the custom instructions. So that tells the AI, how do you want me to think about and act upon the knowledge base that you've given me? What's my role? What do I do? But if we kind of zoom out a little bit further, we're also able to give what's called routing instructions. So again, going back to having those three agents in the one channel, Ask Legal, Ask HR, Ask Finance, we can explain to Wordsmith when a user asks this type of question, or if they mention confidentiality or a trigger word, whatever that might be, you can get super granular. I want you to route here. If they ask anything about dollars or where the office is or something like that, I want you to route to finance. So again, you can get really, really granular and really personalized on this. And that's what I think is really cool. And then the final thing I also love is that, yes, you can have your channels, but also we talked recently about the Wordsmith app in Slack. And do you want to talk a little bit about what we actually use that for, about confidential questions, why that's so good?
Yes. So yeah, I love all of that and everything you were saying about those auto routing, and it's clever, and it goes back to kind of general principles around org design, I think. In the same way that if you're a general counsel at a company and you're thinking, what's the commercial team going to deal with, what's the privacy team going to deal with, and then the sort of legal adjacent business areas as well. Like finance have quasi-legal questions.
Yeah, of course.
InfoSec kind of blurs sometimes with our data team.
Yeah.
And so you already start thinking about who's doing what. And so you're almost having to just program that into the system. And I think it's a case of iterating on that as well. You're not having to think about what could ever be potentially asked, but almost saying, okay, these are the principles, then we just keep an eye on it. I think when you launch this type of thing, we were probably looking at every response, checking that the right agent was answering it. And then if there was a scenario, we would use that as an example. And what I found with AI is you don't have to put every scenario down. No. It's very good at taking context and extrapolating that. So if we said, hey, this is a really good example, word for word, of where this should have gone to this agent, this one's had a go at it, not bad, but I think it should go to that one because it's got better information behind it. And so then you were able to update the custom instructions, which are, as you say, those the brain and the way in which you're teaching the routing. So it sounds maybe it sounds quite complicated, but actually it's, if you were to explain this to a colleague, to say, if you've got a question, go and ask this person, it's kind of putting that down in writing, and it doesn't have to be perfect from the outset. Yeah, no, absolutely. To sum this use case up, it's the intake piece. So I don't know if we mentioned this, but we are Slack users, but you might be Teams, you might be email users. So that would be your intake piece. Where are people coming to be able to self-serve or for you to be able to communicate with them? Yep. And then the second piece would be the knowledge. So what are you syncing up to? Are you a Google user? Are you Notion? Are you SharePoint? Are you Confluence? And then the final piece, which I really think is so core, are those custom instructions. That is what tells the AI what you want it to do and how you want it to do it, essentially, and everything else flows from there. Yeah, and it's a good point on intake because we are talking about this predominantly in Slack because that's how we've set ours up.
Yeah.
But we do use it. There's different places. So certain people in the business might prefer different ways. So email in, you can have a specific email address so that questions get addressed in that way, or you can set up them routing in your emails so that it's automatically included in an email chain. Yeah. But also this sits within the web as well.
Yes.
So someone could just go to a web portal, which people might prefer if they don't want to ask a question in a Slack channel, because obviously everyone gets to see it in the Slack channel unless you set it up as a private function.
Exactly.
But the web function could be someone just going to that, getting the information and actually going to the sources, because it's a bigger screen naturally.
Yeah.
They get to see the exact provisions if you set it up in that way. But you can also hide the underlying sources as well. So this is why your configuration, but it's pretty cool because there's certain situations where I want people to know the answers, but I do not want them to go into the underlying sources because it's fairly confidential. So yes, you can get the answer, but I don't want to, or it might be my shorthand notes. Yeah. I've scribbled some things down and it's fairly unprofessional, to be honest. And so I'd rather they don't see that source. I want them to have the answer, but not necessarily my scribbles. Yeah. So again, you can do it so that they can go to the exact provision or not. Do you want to talk about the one nervousness that I had? And it came up in the context of HR people team issues. And we touched on it then, like certain channels, even within just general commercial work where people might not want to raise it publicly. But this was a specific use case where very sensitive information, I wouldn't want someone even inadvertently doing it. So almost stopping people from asking a question. So can you explain how you got comfortable with that and then set up a whole feature for that?
Absolutely. So this comes up actually more often than not with not even yourself, but just like other customers, where you might have that confidential piece of information that you don't want users being able to tap into through those Ask Legal channels that we just talked about. Or the flip side of that, maybe you know that people might not be so comfortable asking about maternity leave or paternity pay or whatever that might be. So what we were able to do was create a space in Slack separate to the channels, which is the Wordsmith Slack app. So it sits on the left-hand side under the app's little drop-down. And what you're actually able to do there is a user can go in, ask their question. They're in a private app space, so nobody else can see this apart from legal. So by you setting up that Copilot channel, you can have Copilot mode toggled on or off, whereby in Lucy's case, we actually have it toggled on. So we're able for someone to come in, ask a question. Lucy gets to see the answer before it goes back to the user. You get to approve it, verify it, whatever you might want to do. But you're basically able to ring fence that information and act as that final stopgap before it goes back to the user. And then you can do the same thing with, like I said, those sensitive HR questions with maternity leave or paternity pay. User can come in the comfort of their own little private space, ask those questions, get those answers. Nobody else has to know.
Yeah, that has been great.
It's basically the first piece, I guess, if we want to talk about it almost like a jigsaw puzzle, which is the general legal Q&A. And that's where we started, right? But then we kind of felt like when we really dove into your role and what you were doing and what was taking up an awful lot of your time, we were able to add, I guess you would call it layers on top of this. And again, the reason I put so much emphasis on those custom instructions at the start of this was that's where we were really able to create all this magic, I guess. So do you want to talk a little bit about maybe order forms? We jump into that first?
Yeah, of course. Order forms. Yeah, so we realised the benefit of having this place where people can ask questions. Yeah. But also we looked holistically about the types of legal work that we're doing and what's consuming our time. And actually a lot of it is drafting documents and reviewing documents. So with order forms, because we mostly contract on our terms, first party paper, we wanted to, again, enable the business to fill out the order forms and have the terms attached to that so they can then send them out. And that's fairly common with businesses because the commercial team are definitely better at looking at the order form. That's the commercial points. It's not really legal. But one thing I was keen for was that the terms don't get touched. Yes. So that's where our blueprints functionality came in really, was really helpful to us. So blueprints is a jazzy name for templates or precedents. At first, when I first heard it, I thought, I think
you think construction, right? Like you think like an architect with big blue.
I was told that I can't be involved in any naming of the product features because blueprints was like, I was like, what's blueprints? Templates, rest of that. I just didn't get it. Not got the vision.
Yeah.
But if just to explain it, that's where it came from. It's just that's what they're now going to be known as. You wait, it will catch on.
Yeah.
But it makes sense because what we're saying is templates and precedents are fairly static.
Yes.
Whereas blueprints should be way more interactive.
Yeah.
And so we've had contract automation for a long time in legal tech. I remember it where you had to fill out a questionnaire, company name, number of subsidiaries, and then it would auto-populate
data mapping,
documents, and it would fill them out. And that was very much, data mapping, right? You fill in something and it comes up in these places. I've been through documents and had to tag them where it should appear, which was very painful.
Of course.
With AI, you actually are able to take the context and use that to populate the questionnaire.
Yeah.
So firstly, it finds the right places within the document. So you don't have to do the data tagging anymore, which is a relief to me. And secondly, it's able to take the context so you don't have to fill out the questionnaire.
Yeah.
So think about it in a situation where we've all been there, huge long email chain, CC Lucy to draft the document. That's it. That's all I get. And I'm able to forward that email. I still get that.
Context,
in fact, I get it even
context.
I get that even more now because everyone knows I've got AI. But I'm able to just forward that on to the particular blueprint, and it will go down the whole email chain. It understands that the most recent email is the one to take precedence, and then it will go through the document, work out what the placeholders are, and fill in as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then you can ask follow-up questions like, what else do you need from me? Then it'll say, okay, you're missing 4 fields, and ask me about it. And crucially, it pulls out all the bits that it's filled in. So it's very easy to check it because I wouldn't just send it out as is, obviously. I would check it. So it just gets me there more quickly, and I can go straight to the document and see the context of where it's being inserted.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. That speeds everyone up a lot.
Yeah.
But we do retain some of the features I love about contract automation, and also some of the reason you'd want to use contract automation in the age of AI. Like, there's times where I really don't want the AI to mess with the other bits. Like you want it to be deterministic, which AI isn't.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, sure, go for it go and find and fill those things out, but only these boxes.
Yeah.
Don't change this. And whatever you do, don't change the terms.
Yeah.
So those aren't editable in our blueprints.
Yeah.
So we have that anyways. The blueprints is there. You can email something in, or you could just go into it in the web app and type some details in, or speak if that's your preferred input mode. Yeah. But what's really cool is that now you've linked it to our Slack channel.
Yeah.
And so again, it's one place where people can go, because for them, they're not going to say, right, well, it's a question, and then I need to draft a document, so I need to go to this place. Oh, and by the way, I'm reviewing some terms, so I need to go to another place. They just want one place. So if we say to them, okay, if you want an order form, they can just go into Slack, say, I need an order form, and either copy and paste some information in, or I think we've set it up so that it can go back and ask them questions.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess what we've touched on is how it saves you time. And obviously, this definitely still does save you time. But I think what we've enabled the business to do is actually self-serve on this. Like, I would say probably to 99% at this point, which is crazy. And to really hit on your point, the reason I love this feature is because it allows you to determine those exact points and fields that you are happy for them to edit. Obviously, you're still in this channel, you still have oversight, but they can't touch the terms. That is completely locked down. We have all seen what can happen when departments, not to call out sales here, but I'm going to call it sales, basically get to go crazy on something, and it can end up quite disastrous. But anyways, this is locked down apart from the fields that you are happy for them to edit. But what we have done, and why I think this is cool by itself, but we have been able to allow them to self-serve in Slack, but we've also hooked this up to our CRM, which is Atio, and Company's House. So what we can do is, I'm going to use Bob, which I always use in every single one of my Substacks ever. Bob comes into Slack, and he needs an order form for Acme Limited. He doesn't know anything else about Acme other than its name and who he's been dealing with. But he can go in, type that in. It's going to pull all the information that they've agreed via Atio, and it's also going to pull Acme Limited's information from Company's House. It then generates an absolutely beautiful, gorgeous order form for him that we know is 100% correct. He takes a look at that. Lucy can also have a look over that if she needs to. We can create conditions where she might need to be escalated to or tagged in. Thankfully, none of that has ever happened. But to your point before, what I think makes this absolutely foolproof is maybe Bob only gives 3 out of 5 of the details. Wordsmith will come back and say, cool, thanks, Bob. I've got 3 out of 5. Need you to give me 2 more here, then I can actually fill it out. So there's no getting around it. There's no half-assing it. Like, you have to give the details for it to actually be able to generate. It's not going to hallucinate. It's not going to make up random information just to get them there and get the job done. It has to be perfect. I think that makes you be able to sleep at night.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can, again, the way you can configure the blueprint is you can set some which are required.
Yes.
And so they can't generate the document, which means they can't send it out, which means they can't go and sign their deal until that box has been done. And we try to make that easy for them because, and I'm very used to finding companies' details.
Of course.
And I used to include comments in Word documents saying, please make sure you have the full legal entity details, because we've all been there down in due diligence down the road where you'll say this, which entity you're even contracting with. And so, over the years, I've tried to instill why it's important and, company number in case they change their name, because 5 years' time might not be called that anymore. We really do need the company number in there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm used to going to company's house and finding that information if we're in the UK, and there's other resources in other jurisdictions. And so what we're saying is we need that information, but we will make your life easier. So we'll try and help you get there. Yeah. But you can't send that out until you've got these details. And if it requires, you need to go and find that information from somewhere else, then that's what you need to do. So you still need to check it, but it will get you there a lot more quickly.
Okay. Cool. So that is order forms. And then similarly, I think we can cover this one really quickly because everybody is so bored of NDAs, but we can do the same thing with NDAs, right? And I think what is cool here is that we have set up a layer of questions. So user comes in. Not everybody's as educated about NDAs as we are. Not everybody's as bored of them as we are. But again, let's take Mary, who comes into Slack, and she knows that she needs an NDA. That's it. That's all she knows. So she asks, okay, I need an NDA. Wordsmith will come back and ask her, do you need a one-way NDA or do you need a mutual NDA? And in plain English, they'll be able to explain the criteria by which and help her figure out essentially what it is that she needs. Now, of course, Lucy's always there. The team's always there to direct. But if Mary needs this done right now and Lucy's on a call, she can figure it out with Wordsmith. So once Mary says, okay, I need a mutual NDA, that sounds about right, Wordsmith will then come back into what we talked about before, ask a couple of questions, what's the parties' names, etc. Whatever Lucy has defined and signed in the blueprint, Mary gives the information, generated, bada bing, bada boom, we're all done.
Yeah, and it's great. And I think with all of these, with the blueprints, it's the information's there. It's our latest version. So if you update a version, that they're going to the latest one, which is awesome. And it pulls the information needed as opposed to they've drafted it, comes to me, I say, that's great, but actually you need a mutual one, or what's the purpose? Have a conversation to find out why and therefore be able to do that. So they get it instantly. Yeah. And also what's really great is you were talking about someone not necessarily even knowing. They might know because they've got experience that they need an NDA. They might know because the counterparty said, I can't go any further evaluating Wordsmith until we have an NDA, which makes complete sense. But also you can do it so that it's triggered within the agents themselves. Yeah. So we talked earlier about the trigger words, but if someone's saying, I need to share this, or someone wants to find out more information.
A contractor or whatever that might be.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, going back to the way that we're routing their agents, they might surface that. And it's almost like issue spotting, but from within Wordsmith saying, hey, you mentioned you were going to share some information. Do you want an NDA? And it's almost like Wordsmith can be quite proactive. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, hey, we've got this. And then it goes through the process. And it's kind of like a tree diagram, isn't it? With different points. Is it unilateral? Is it mutual? What's the purpose? And also importantly, when you think about these contract flows, you have to think about your own paper and the other paper and third-party paper separately. And they are very different. Yeah. So at the moment, we've been talking about our own paper. If it's we need an NDA that we're going to create, or we've got our order form, which is ours, and that will populate using blueprints. Yeah. But we've kind of evolved from that as well, but not trying to use the same process, but put the third-party paper review within the tool as well, which is also quite cool.
Yeah. And this was a lot of fun to do. So I think that maybe my perspective on contracting is a little bit different because I did a law degree, but I've never actually, thankfully, had the pleasure of having to redline something.
No, but I do like the way you've called this fun.
Yeah, it's so much fun. But yeah, like to me, what is reviewing a contract in its most basic form? It's evaluating a contract against a set of rules. That's basically it. You've got fallbacks, you've got logic, and you basically redline, you do all your magic on that. So what we were able to do, and you can probably talk a little bit more intelligently about this, but essentially we built the playbook, right? And it's just basically our standards. What are we willing to accept? What are we not willing to accept? And then our fallbacks between that. I don't know if you want to comment any more on that, but that's its most basic form, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you're looking at third-party paper, so this is someone else's form of it, the things that we're looking out for, we've included that. And we can overlay context as well, which I think is crucial. So it's not just static rules, because it kind of depends often on the situation, which is where human judgment's essential, where you think, actually, this is fine because of that. You can put some logic in. For example, on our NDAs, we've got a rule in there that says if this is the only thing we're negotiating, then don't worry about it. Like, let's roll with it. Shouldn't give this away too much. Anyone negotiating out to me. There's just one more thing. We'll just let it slide. But that's the reality of it. I wouldn't want someone sending a markup back where it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we talked about this before, but we have the ability to kind of look for things outside the box too, right? I think in the past with contracting tools, it really just was those static rules. If it wasn't in there, like if you hadn't defined this is what I'm looking for, then the system wouldn't be able to identify it. But we are, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was one of the early things that we discussed internally with the legal engineers as well was, yes, I'm looking for these specific things, as you say, but especially in an NDA, because an NDA is on the surface of quite a simple document, but equally there's nothing to stop someone at the start of a transaction putting something into that contract that they shouldn't be. So what we said was like, well, what if there isn't a check for there's an obligation to pay £1 million a year, someone could put that in there, and I haven't
don't know what you don't know, right? Like you don't know what to look at.
Exactly, and haven't put a check in for that. So we have that sort of as default, which is really helpful. And it just means that for the team, again, I'm not slowing them down. They have guidance. So we have rules, we have fallbacks, we have internal guidance. So I try to educate the team as much as possible because they're the best negotiators, my business stakeholders. They sit in negotiations all day long and they're good at it. So if I can give them context of why we need this clause and why we need to push back or why it could be problematic for us, then they're going to do a better job and they're going to have that context themselves. So we've got internal guidance and also external guidance. So it might come out in the form of comments where they can explain why we need to push back. That's really helpful for if you've got a company that has a complex group structure, which has, I don't know, maybe you've got a certain fund structure. You need to say our definition of affiliates needs to be broader than what you might expect because it needs to capture these types of companies. That's unique. You probably explain that a lot of time to your counterparties. So instead of having to go over it again, we can build that into the functionality. So when we're thinking about our workflows for reviewing an NDA, for example, it's a different workflow. It doesn't sit with our blueprints. It fits with our playbooks, but it's still within the NDAs. And actually, like, the team don't need to know that nuance. We need to know it because we had to map out the flows, but they don't need to know that. They either, I need an NDA or I've been sent this NDA. Can I sign it? Yeah. And then we take it a step further, right back to that question of linking it up to our delegation of authority with maybe our signing matrix attached. Yeah. And it can say, okay, cool, well, I see this is an NDA. I can go and check our DOA. I can see which jurisdiction it's in, and I can see who's got authority to sign it.
That is what I love about it. And that's what I love about operating in Slack. So again, yes, we can generate the red line and the user gets that back. But what we're able to do is actually tag you in the moment. So we're not only giving somebody who might be new to the business, they might not know you so well, but also we're alerting you that this is happening, bringing you to the conversation and just bringing everybody closer together, moving more quickly and making things seamless.
Yeah, the other thing that I love about this is, I've always tried to allow the company to do it themselves if they can within the relevant guardrails. But here you have the ability to track either blueprints generated but also reviews that have been undertaken.
Yeah.
So I have a dashboard if I go into the web where I can see what's going on. So I can see who's creating what NDAs, even if they're self-serving. So I've kind of got that visibility across the board, which is helpful because you also get quite a lot of visibility from NDAs.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's being looked at, what opportunities, who are we talking to?
What's going on?
Yeah, so you don't want to lose that. So you've got to have the dashboard just to keep your finger on the pulse.
Exactly.
Join up the dots between the business of, hang on a minute.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a bit about what happens when somebody else marks up our contracts and how we've kind of gone about that and had to deal with it and project management and
Yeah, and we probably need a whole separate episode, I think,
honestly,
on first party paper. It's really it's a tricky problem. What I found is that lawyers do this differently, how they mark up or deal with track changes.
This was my biggest learning curve, I have to say, because again, I think I like to simplify things a lot, but the way in which different people redline across different industries, different people in general, the way that they were taught, it's actually mind-blowing. But anyways,
yeah, exactly. It's like email comments, it's comments in bubbles, it's track changes, it's clean in a PDF. It really is. I think our engineers their minds are blown by the number of times.
I can't deal with the non-standardization. It just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Where's GitHub? And can we just have a merge conflict?
Yeah.
And I'm interested. I think this will be an interesting time for legal because I wonder whether things will be more standardized as technology gets better. But at the moment, we're grappling with kind of old systems and the way in which we do them. And so we need it to be flexible enough, but have the rigid rules. Yeah. So we should probably do a deep dive in terms of the logic behind that and how we've set that up, because I find it personally really interesting. Yeah. I have a vested interest for this technology to be working fully. So I'm working very closely with our engineering team, our product team, and our legal engineers on this because it's awesome. But we're able to, again, link it up to the channels that we've already got to say, hey, this has come in, we've got a markup. But crucially, a lot of it is around project management as well. So it's not just, I actually spend a small amount of time doing the actual contract itself in proportion to the emails going back and forth, the internal discussion of when I'm going to come back to them so that can be communicated back, saving documents down, which again, we can come to that in a separate session probably. But the biggest thing that I would say is the best thing to do is to actually work where the business is working. Because when we first did this, we were linking up this has come in, it comes in, and I was working in one place for project management. I was thinking, great, create a ticket here. Then I've got the red lines, and it wasn't where the team were working. Yeah. And so it meant just duplication on my part. I was having to update my own project management system, plus the team, plus they were doing it on their end as well. And, candidly, it's a place where we thought this isn't working, and that's okay too. And we tried it and it doesn't work. So it was actually pretty easy to reverse out of it. And you were able to say, that's cool, we'll just rebuild. Yeah. So we went back a step, and then it means that we've connected to the CRM where our team are working so that it correlates with the process that they're already familiar with. Yeah,
exactly. So I would say we started off before we launched our own tasks tracker. So we have our own project management tool within Wordsmith, of course, that we now use. But before that, the whole business uses Linear. So that's where everybody was sitting. And then sales were obviously mapping and tracking everything in our CRM. So we kind of took a step back from that, and we were like, okay, we need to meet everybody where they are. We also need to stop not even duplicating, but triplicating work that you're currently doing. So what we were able to do is, and let's go back to the user in Slack. User comes in, again, salesperson, they've just gotten this marked up agreement. Okay, what do I do? They're able to literally just ask that in natural language in Slack. Wordsmith will evaluate it. Okay, this looks like a redlined agreement. This is what you need to do. And we would have basically embedded a fill out form. So if you're a Jira user, use a Jira form, Asana, whatever. Just take the URL of that, put that in your custom instructions, and you're basically able to tell Wordsmith, okay, when X happens, Y, send out this form to the user. They just click the link, really user-friendly, and they fill out the form, and they would attach that contract. That would then go to Lucy's Linear board, and you'd also get a ping in Slack to say, hey, again, Bob has uploaded these terms that you need to check out. He's flagged as urgent. Obviously, everything is urgent. It needs to be done yesterday. Mm-hmm. Can you go take a look? And then we could basically work on alerts through that. Obviously, all project management tools have that kind of intelligent automation where you can say, okay, in 3 days, remind me, or whatever that might be. Assign to Lucy always, blah, blah, blah. And we were also able to match that up to ATIO. So you and I know that the stages of contracting are a lot more granular than what they appear to be on the likes of ATIO. So like in your linear board, we were able to really drill into it's with Lucy, now it's with the counterparty, now it's back with Lucy, now it's with the counterparty. And now it's out for signature, it's signed and saved, it's whatever that might be. But what we were able to do was just take the high level version and then match that up with ATIO so that everybody in sales would know what's going on. And then what we were able to do, which was my favorite part, was again, going back to the salesperson, they just want to know what the heck's going on with my contract, right? I gave it to Lucy yesterday, why is it not done now? So they're able to come into Slack and say, all right, where is the contract with Acme Limited? I submitted it yesterday. Again, Wordsmith is able to pull that information via MCP, so Model Context Protocol, from your board essentially and say, okay, you submitted it yesterday, chill out. But she's taken a look at it. She's left a comment to say this will probably take her maybe 2 days, kind of assures them, knows that you're working on it, but keeps everybody lovely in the loop. So that's where we started. And now we've moved all that over to our own internal, basically project management tool within Wordsmith itself that allows you to have a bird's eye view of everything going on, but it works the same way, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows what's going on all the time.
Yeah, and it's another thing that there's the interesting statistics that I won't misquote here about context switching. And so I think one of the things you were adamant about is once we set this up, we have to be very, the change management piece around making sure that, it's deliberate and it's so that, yes, they're used to coming to the team and speaking to your team about it, but they need to use this channel because it's going to get better as you ask more questions and that's more deliberate. And that's been huge on both the intake, not just people sending me stuff and me saying, thanks very much, got it, came back, but also those chases, because I used to get chased quite a lot, which was frustrating.
And it must be so stressful, right? Like, I know what my Slack looks like, but to have all those DMs and then threads within different channels, like the job, like we work in a startup, it's busy. I'm sure at times it can be overwhelming, but hopefully that has now come down for you a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And like for the whole team, because they don't necessarily know who to ask in the team or they will just, and so they just
cling on to the
yeah, it's okay, and I understand it. You know, they want to be moving quickly and they want to. That's totally understandable. But it's fair for them and me because every time I'm answering someone else's email or Slack or someone walks over to your desk, every second I'm doing that, I'm not doing the head down work on something else, and that's not necessarily fair either because it shouldn't be the people that just go direct. And so that's been great for them to have visibility as well without me. And also because it's able to go to the context. I don't know if I said to you, oh, do you remember that deck you were doing last week, Ellie? Where did we get to? How many slides did that have?
Yeah.
It's like, let me just say, what are the outstanding points on there? I'm just about to go on a call. How many things do you think are outstanding there? Like, well, hang on a minute. I've done a million things since then, not all of them relating to even this area of law. Let me think. So actually, because it's connected to the actual information, they can say, okay, what are the things I need to discuss on this call? Where are we? How close are we to signing? And we're, again, able to give a bit of instruction on, you can add in like due dates. So when you move something from one bit to the other, like, okay, they know that I've picked it up. They know that I've moved it from backlog to do to wherever it will be. And I try and say when I'm going to slot that in, which can be mapped out again. You can get very clever with AI to say, you've got these slots within the day. This is when you need to do this work. And therefore, you should be aiming to get it back by that time. So there's lots of project management, which means that they have visibility. And if they know I'm going to do it tomorrow, they feel less inclined to follow up.
Hound you. Yeah. Well, you put it way more politely, but hound you, let's be real. It's really, really funny though, and I think this could be another episode in itself around the whole project management. And like, I have worked with probably close to 100 legal teams at this point, and I have not yet met one that likes a project management tool, which is hilarious to me. Yeah. Because they can be so personalized. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand why people, when they first step into Jira, why they would hate it so much. It's not built with legal in mind. It is built for engineering teams or sales teams, like people with very, very standard, not to make it basic, but like it is a lot more simple in structure to what we have in legal. But these things can be really, really customized. Like, of course, I hope that you use the task ability and the project management tool within Wordsmith. But if that's where your business sits within Jira, know that you can make this really personalized. And hopefully with the likes of MCP and AI coming in, that it makes it a lot more accessible for you, right? That you can just search up, okay, where was I with this? Or even, oh my gosh, my favorite thing recently, Slack MCP, like this complete tangent off track. But I was testing this yesterday where I created this channel and I really, really like buried this message where I pretended that you and I were having a conversation over this thing called Project Pluto. And
why it's Thinkful that you see.
Yeah. Well, and I was pretending that you and I were messaging over and back, and I was like, oh, I created this presentation and literally about the slide deck, and here's the update, here's what we need to do. We need to basically update XYZ. And I was able to come into Ask Wordsmith, which is our general like Ask Legal channel. And I was able to ask Wordsmith, oh my God, I'm heading into this meeting in 5 minutes. What's the update on Project Pluto? What was the last thing I told Lucy? And it was able to basically pull that information for me and say, chill out. Here's what it is. I got you, girl. Like, here's the slide deck. Here's everything you prepped. This is what you told Lucy. And like, again, to get more into this, if you wanted to hook up your granola notes and your Slack and everything, like you really can make yourself like a personalized, it's wonderful.
Oh, it's like an assistant to prep you for sure. And actually, like when you think about, again, the things that take a long time, like I think lawyers are excellent at finding things. They sort of, we put things somewhere, we know broadly where it is. But even then, there's going to be a place where like, there was an email exchange, who was it from? And the search functionality isn't always great.
Gmail search for functionality sucks. It absolutely sucks. I will say it. It's horrendous, but yes.
So you can't, exactly. Yeah. So that, and then, but it might be in a Slack and it might be, I had a conversation or it might have been on a call. So I think you spend a lot of time actually just figuring out where you were and you can customize it, right? So one thing I love is that when we're doing kind of contract reviews, the reason we have a summary table on the left-hand side is because we pulled out the information that, as a lawyer, before you even open the contract, you want to know what's the value of it, which jurisdiction, should I straight away ship this over to our colleagues in New York?
Yeah.
Or what's the value? Is this under a certain amount? And whilst we have AI to review everything, that means that your risk tolerance is going to be different. And what's the purpose? And what does this company do? Which can link up to, you do some research on that company with publicly available information, and then you understand why someone might have more of a problem with it than, a different type of company. So it gives you that context, which I think means that you can be far more strategic than just red line blind. And so, you can just get them way, way more quickly. So I love that.
I love it. Okay, so I guess we've kind of touched on all the different elements that we currently have in that one specific, like what we would call overarching Ask Legal use case. So we had the general Ask Legal, we had NDAs, order forms, customer red lines, contract status, all of that stuff. But you touched on something really interesting there, which was knowledge. And I think ultimately this is where we as humans are going to kind of be elevated, which is AI is able to extract all this information for us, but we ultimately are able then to make said decisions a lot quicker. So let's touch on all those contracts that you have. Now, what are you able to do with them? Do we have a tool that you could use that makes your life so much easier? Do you tell, Lucy?
Yeah, this has been an absolute game changer. It's our reports functionality. So what I found is that legal has so much information, such a rich data source, because if you're involved in a lot of the negotiations, you've got the source of truth right at your fingertips. But so often they were stored away, and maybe it's like beautifully filed away in your folder structures.
I applaud you if you are, because we're not. We're getting there.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to do. And I came into this function thinking, oh, great, I've got a clean slate. And it quite quickly got out of control. Yeah. And I think that's the reality of the job. But instead of those contracts just sitting there dormant, suddenly we're able to kind of bring them to life. We tend to look at this end to end. So we talk about the drafting it, the requests for it, the negotiation. Then when it's saved and signed, we want to make sure that the format of the document is labeled in a certain way and then saved into our Google Drive, because a lot of the things that we do are connected to our Google Drive. So it's really important for us that flow works and it's circular. So we have a connection to e-signature platform. In our case, it's DocuSign. And so when something goes out on DocuSign, once that comes back in and is signed by all parties, it automatically gets saved into our Google Drive with our naming format, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And then from there, we're able to overlay and create reports on that structure. So we know that it's going to be saved down in the right place.
Yeah.
We know that every agreement is going to be captured. And then the reports functionality is essentially being able to deep dive into a certain area in a contract. So think of it as a table that you might have for due diligence, where you have every single contract name on the left-hand side, and then you have contract columns across the top, which would be number of seats, date it was signed by both parties, auto renewal, limitation on liability, assignment clause, change of control.
Whatever you want to
So like the way that I describe it is what you might know from due diligence, but you don't just need it for when you had an M&A, because if you think about it, it's wild that we only look at this when you're going into a transaction or a counterparty asks you a question about what's your insurance limit on this, when you could just have that information at your fingertips.
Yeah.
And so we have the report, and more columns come along. Someone has an odd request and we think, well, let's just put a new column in for that. And then that means that I can run that as regularly as I want. And so if I'm about to go into an LT meeting, I can run the report and say, do you know what, we've got some auto renewals coming up. Our CS team can look at that. And then we have live data. That means that we can be very strategic to the business.
Yeah.
So it's useful when you have questions from counterparties, again, on our flow downs. So when we have to back-to-back agreements with our existing sub-processors, have we got that protection with our LLMs?
Yeah.
I'm able to very quickly check, as opposed to me having to find the agreement, find the clause. I've got that information at my fingertips. So I love it. And then from there, we can do things from that DD report. So because we're in-house focused, it's not about just getting the report and that being the end of it. It's what can you do from there? So we have agent cells, which means we can draft contracts. Again, we can maybe have a blueprint, which is a letter. If you need a consent from something, you're able to just say, okay, I need that letter, which is connected to the blueprint, so you know it's the correct letter. And what's the report got? It's got direct access to the underlying contract, which has the legal names, and we know it's got the full legal entity, it's got the company number, it's got the notice provision about how you should draft that notice.
Yeah.
And so it's able to auto-populate across all of the contracts that you've got. If you need a specific consent to assignment, for example, or change of control, you could actually draft that from there. So it's almost not just having the static work product, but what can you do with that, and what do we need to do?
Yeah.
And even our slides, right? So yes, you've got this big report, but our CEO just wants to know the top 3 things that you have to distill from a massive report. We can just flip that into slides and have 3 bullet points generated from that report.
Yeah, exactly. And then just to add on top of that, the ability for alerts again. So like if you have, again, the amount of times I've heard this, if I had a pound, well, let's say pound, for every time that I've been asked this by in legal ops, is like, how do we figure out when things are up for auto renewal? And so you're telling me, okay, I've got to go read the contract, find it out, then okay, in the past I would have advised maybe let's set up a Slack bot reminder, like let's go with what we have immediately. But the ability for this to find that information itself and then know to notify you is definitely next level. When we're talking about these reports, and the reason why legal teams haven't had this level of detail in the past was, I imagine, because of the level of work that would have had to have gone into this, or external costs. So like, can you kind of talk to me a little bit around, like, or give people an idea of how much would this roughly have cost, or like how many hours this would have taken a legal team to do? And if you give me a rough number, I guess.
Yeah, I think classic, I should have the cap on, like it depends.
It depends. Yeah.
But I suppose it does really depend on like the number of contracts you've got in there.
Okay. Let's say 1,000. Let's just go.
But yeah, I mean 1,000. If you think about like even just finding the right provision in 1,000 contracts is going to take hours and hours. We're talking tens of thousands of pounds if you're going to send that to and you would go to often to law firms because you don't have the capacity, and you certainly don't have the capacity to do it in the time that you need to do it. So say there's a regulatory change coming and you need to go through all of your contracts and figure out which ones you need to amend. You don't have the luxury of time all the time to be able to do that within a certain period of time. So you need to do it quickly. And if you don't have that capacity in-house, then, you need to outsource it. Yeah. And, the AI does the first review. So it will populate the columns. You can iterate on the question if you want more detail, if you want the format to be different in bullet points, for example. And crucially, it takes you directly to the source. So people always say to me, how are junior lawyers going to learn what a change of control clause is if they're not trying to find it? Well, I don't think me flicking through an agreement physically made me a better lawyer. I think, Control F was a bit of a game changer. I remember when things became electronic and I thought, wow, I've got a data room now and it's electronic. I can now search on a computer to find these clauses or these phrases. But now it can identify, and it will take you there to the exact clause, and I still have to read it. It's just a lot quicker. And you can have the ability to kind of approve it. So if you want to make sure that someone's checked it, you can click approve, or you can assign it to someone else, or flag it internally if you think, actually, do you know what? I still want to go to external counsel because, law firms are definitely still part of our ecosystem. And don't get me wrong, that's an important role. And if you want them to check like certain wording, then you still need to do it. But it's just something that you'd have if there was a specific need for it or a budget because of a certain project. Whereas now it's just you can do it just in your BAU. So for an in-house lawyer, I think that's amazing. And you talked about having reports for auto renewals, for example, or alerts that you can trigger. So you've got this live data set. But the other thing is having visibility over what's happening in your contract base while you're live. So again, you can use this report because you can then query it afterwards and you can say, how many times do we deviate from our agreed position on this clause? And it will give you statistics. And you can say, how often do we get the right to use the logo? And if you realize that you're changing something 90% of the time, query, should we be changing our underlying terms? Do we need to update our playbook? And you can even talk to the report saying, okay, well, based on this report, do you think we should make any recommendations to our playbook, or where are the key risks? And then if you need to escalate some and say, actually, do you know what? I think we should make some changes here. You can do that. So it's sort of very live because, again, playbooks shouldn't be static either. They should evolve with your business. So if you have a new product line coming in, you can say, oh, well, how many times did we have to put some bespoke wording into that contract and then query it? If you're doing something through a system, then I know how many people are generating NDAs, as opposed to just opening a Word document, plugging in some things and sending it over email that I might not have visibility over. So it might not get caught in our metrics, even though we've set up a system that enables people to do that. So I think there's a lot of lost metrics in the past, whereas now we have, when they're drafting it, we can see that. When markups are coming back in, we can see it. When we have signed documents, we can see it because everything that goes out on DocuSign goes into our G Drive. And so metrics are only as good as the underlying data. And you can use the tools to help you compile the underlying data as well.
What has this done for you in terms of workloads? Like, give us a before and after. Like, are you starting to feel the effects? It'll be really awkward if you don't, and then I'll probably have to go back to work. But what does it look like for you day to day? Do you feel a difference, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, I think as a lawyer, I'm probably prone to perfection and trying to build a workflow from the start to the end. And I think one thing that you've encouraged is kind of let's build this bit. Let's start with this bit and let's get people used to using this bit. And then you've already got the vision to work out how it can all connect. And so don't try to build everything. I think I wanted to have end to end. I wanted communication going out to the team. So I've got,
because you can see where it's going, right? I totally respect that. But like in terms of reality, I guess it's just, let's just bite it off piece by piece and V1 and iterate and keep going.
And it's okay. I think that's the point about earlier. Like, hey, it might not work that well, but it's kind of better than the manual things that we're doing at times. Exactly. And so is constantly thinking, how can we make this better and better for the team? And, communication and change management and stuff is important. But the low-hanging fruit is we've kind of mapped it out before, haven't we? To say, what are the things that would make the biggest impact? What are the most time-intensive things from your perspective on our side? And then you can figure out where you start. And so for us that Ask Legal, I would highly recommend, everyone doing that.
Yeah.
There's loads of things in the Word plugin that, again, we haven't even got to now, but like really quick wins for the team. And even with the playbook, right, I think, again, I'm prone to, right, well, I need to build the best possible playbook and, it needs to be perfect in every way and have all the checks, and not really. And also you can use the tools themselves to like create the playbook. So Wordsmith can help you do the playbook. And so just start. And then once you start using it, you quickly see, it's very easy to see where it needs some tweaking. Like we said, like it answers the question, it goes to the wrong agent. Or you can see that, and then it's quickly, you just change it once, and then it's going to get better. Exactly. Or in a playbook, you're probably reviewing it anyway. So that's just so much easier when you see it, and then you can make that change. So yeah, the quick wins have been amazing, but also the heavy lifting and the reports for strategic work has been a game changer. Yeah. I'm not going to quantify it because I haven't got those statistics to hand, but that's what's cool about it, because we're now moving into kind of data territory, which means it's easy to track and justify.
Absolutely. And I would say we are probably an anomaly when it comes to how quickly the business adopted this. Like, I think it's probably not fair for us. So to give people like a realistic idea of how long it took us to implement this, being completely honest, it's a bit of like shoemaker's children scenario, like where we really, really were the last to kind of like work on this for ourselves. We'd implemented it, like I said, in hundreds of other companies.
I think it's piecing it together. I think it's we're doing bits and pieces, and we have the business who are able to get on board with it as well. So
they were super quickly.
Yeah, and there's more complicated businesses. So I think one of the best ways to, again, justify this or to get the business on board is do something that's going to make their lives better.
Yeah.
So whether that's saying to finance, you've got your own email address that will query the documents. So I don't have to send the documents over to each time, or it's speeding you up so you don't have to wait for me to do that. Or the minute you say to them, it's fine, you just forward in this email, I'll populate the draft and you have it within seconds. They like that. And so it's kind of like the quick wins for legal, but also the quick wins for the business. Yeah. And then that's what we find Smith anyway with like the business users, right? We often find that it starts off with legal using it. And then because we don't necessarily know, so then everyone at the business says, can I use it? Like, we want to use that tool as well, which is amazing.
Oh, 100%. And that's what happened in Doc Planner, right? I would get pings on, I heard you owned Wordsmith. Like, could we have one? And it does start to spread like wildfire, which is amazing to see. But it really just is a testament on how, obviously the product, but like the use case itself is so incredibly useful. And it completely makes sense. Like, I think YC themselves said, last week they did their like requests for startups, and it was that company brain was what they were looking for, and this really is, I guess, our answer to it. But yeah, I guess in terms of setup, like if you had your blueprints, your playbooks, everything set up, I really think this is something you could accomplish setup wise, like in a week. I mean, it's really not that hard.
But also we're building ours so that it's all available in chat. So you don't need, I mean, I'm very fortunate because I've got you to guide me through it, and you see the world and workflows and piecing things together. But not everybody has the luxury of that. But what we've done is made it easy so that Wordsmith, if, for example, take the reports, right? That could be, okay, well, I need to take the time to set up a report. What do I need it to say? You can just now in chat say, hey, you don't even need to say that it's a report. You just say, I need to do this task. Can you help me do that? And it will say, I think let's build a report. I'm going to build these columns for you. Do you want me to create a repository? Do you want me to connect it up? And so it's very, very easy to do, I think.
Yeah, it's very intuitive. Like it's just, I think, like, who was it that said that natural language is the next coding language? Like, it is something along those lines. Like, it really is that these products, like not just Wordsmith alone, it's going to be easier than ever to get what you want just by asking. You don't need to know every single piece of the product inside out. To your point, just ask it. The easiest way to figure it out is just ask it.
Yeah, exactly. And also, we're very conscious of the fact that the business have their own systems. I think what you were saying earlier is people want one brain, and we're not saying you should get the legal AI tool and everyone should run off that if you're in the people team, for example.
It's just not realistic, right? Like,
no, because they've got their own HR systems, or you've got your CRM, you've got whatever it is, you've got a place where you store a lot of information, and realistically, you're not going to come out. And we don't want that either, because
that turns into a completely different product, right?
Yeah,
like
we would rather just have the ability, and depending on how you set up your positions, or you might not want it to go to certain places, and that's totally fine. But if you do, use that as the source of truth, because you don't have to keep it. And so it's actually saying, we'll go and get what we need to. We'll collaborate with different people. Our tasks can go across the business, because legal in-house is definitely not, you're in your swim lane. You're doing all sorts everywhere. And so it's unrealistic to think that legal's tools should be just accessible to those people, just in one place, and everyone has to come into a new portal. We're trying to make it so that it's available and people want to interact with legal. That's the plan.
That's the plan. Okay, well, thank you so much. I think that wraps us up. Is there anything else you want to say, I guess?
No, I just think I would encourage everybody to start to iterate, to not strive for perfection. And there's loads of resources. I know you've got lots in the legal engineering project, use cases, and there's help at hand. Even if you want inspiration, I think the first step is figuring out what your legal team does. That might be horizon scanning, probably another episode. Contract reviews. Is it just random questions? Is it non-legal work? Is it updating policies? What is it that your team spends a lot of time doing just now? And then figure out which ones would ultimately could be done with AI more quickly and could free up your time, so that then you can think about the really strategic use cases and build from there. But just get going with it, and you can iterate as you go.
Exactly. Okay, well, good. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Boom.